Activate Your Introvert, the weekly show to help leaders build performance by understanding introversion. In this week's show, Leadership Tip of the Week. Help people find their own route. A discussion with Alex Muir. Alex helps millennial professionals maximize their performance physically and mentally. Through studying successful people, Alex shares tools and tactics to build better human beings more equipped for their futures. Question of the week. Do introverts lack social skills? And introvert myth of the week. Life is better if you're an extrovert. Just before speaking to Alex, did you see in the news this week that IKEA are trialling a new layout? They're changing, or certainly looking at changing, that famous route through their stores where you can't escape till you've seen and bought absolutely everything they sell, as well as having to fight your way past families of unhappy children and even more grumpy men being dragged around the store. IKEA has announced plans to introduce what it calls a more immersive experience. According to industry media reports, customers can expect to become part of the furniture by lounging around in the spaces. They'll be invited to hang out with social media influencers or retreat to relaxing areas of the store. In several activities, including light therapy, they will be encouraged to interact, connect, and recharge. And of course, take selfies. The idea of interacting with influencers left me a bit cold, but it was an interesting change to the idea of making you do things you don't want to do and making space or time for different types of people to shop in the way they want. The idea of being able to recharge and relax in the store certainly appealed to me. Is there a leadership lesson in there? Well, rather than forcing all of your team through the well-worn path perhaps that you've travelled as well, and making them do things the way you want, can you guide them through to the end result, allowing them to deliver what you want in the way best suited to them? What would you like to know about introversion in business? This week's question comes from Alex. No, not the same one I'm talking to later. Do introverts lack social skills? It's a great question, and there are others who have asked this question on the basis that they see introverts avoid social situations. Well, the avoiding is probably a need for solitude at that time. Introversion is not a lack of social skills. It is an inclination towards solitude. Introverts are no more or less likely to lack social skills than anybody else. Alex linked the question to social anxiety. In my view, that's a completely separate issue, and social anxiety doesn't necessarily relate to social skills. Even great socializers can have social anxiety at times, and introverts can have, or not have, great social skills. Perhaps if you're looking to get some of your team to interact more with the rest of your team, or get involved in other events, don't force them. Listen to their needs, discuss what you'd like them to do and why, and then give them the space and help them to do it in the way that suits them. What question would you like answered on the show? Whether you want to be on the show or just have your question answered like Alex. Go to activateyourintroverts.co.uk where there's a box for you to ask your question. You could also follow on Facebook and discuss the answers at the show's page, Activate Your Introvert. And in the same way, if there's a particular myth you'd like explored or issue that stops you getting the most from the quieter people in your team, let me know. The mission of this show is to help you understand introversion and build your business. Now it's time to chat to Alex. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks so much for having me on, John. Happy to be here.
We're going to have a great discussion around some of these tools and tactics that you use to help people maximize performance. But just before we get into that, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm actually an introvert, but over time, I've become more extroverted. I have a background in financial services, and within the financial services industry, people learn to become more extroverted because of the role or the job that they do.
So you've learned lots of tactics, do you think, that make you appear more extroverted, or you've just kind of learned to get on in this noisy world? Because I think anyone with a sales and finance background has got a lot of competing to do, really, haven't they?
Yeah, and it's everyone learns how to put on their fake face, right? Or put on a face at work, if you will. It's not always easy to do, but over time you do learn how to do it. At the core, I've always been an introvert, and I know there's other sales professionals out there as well that are definitely introverted. They're good at playing the game and hiding it as well. So
do you think though that putting on a face, as you just put it there, is a good thing for performance?
I'll be honest, I don't think it's a good thing for performance, because I definitely feel like it hinders your ability to be truly authentic and to be able to create the best connections with people and to show them who you really are, right? If you show them who you really are and you're able to be your true authentic self, that's when you will create way better connections, way better relationships with people, and it'll increase the trust with other people even more.
What is it that prevents people from doing that?
I feel like it's the society's pressure on introverts to have to adhere to an extroverted world, even though as we're seeing with the pandemic, there's a lot more. They're trying to change that. For the longest time, people have been like more forced to become extroverted, but I feel like as time's going on and as everyone's learning how to live within the pandemic, I feel like it's going to be changing workplace ideologies and also business ideologies around leadership and how people can still be themselves, be introverted, but still be very effective in business and at work.
I think that's fascinating, because leadership, if I look back over my career and if I think back to how people were leaders and managers and what were good examples before my career started, it's constantly changing. So I think you're right when you say how the pandemic in itself is going to accelerate a lot of the change that perhaps has been hiding away or bubbling away over the last couple of years.
Definitely. The pandemic's really accelerated lots of different changes. And number one, how we communicate to introverts and extroverts, right? Businesses and leaders, they know communication styles need to change, especially in sales industry, where it's like, you're competing against your colleagues and stuff like that. Things need to be more collaborative and cohesive.
Of course, that's where things become slightly more difficult, because an introvert, best thinking, best performance, of course, is on their own. And if you're asking them to be more collaborative, that's absolutely possible, but they've got to be more trusting. They've got to be in a place where they feel secure, I guess. As does everybody, of course, but
yeah, no, exactly. Introverts need to be given the opportunity to be able to communicate the way that they're most comfortable with communicating. And business leaders and executives need to give them the opportunity to communicate the way that they feel that they should. That'll allow them to give their best thoughts.
What do you think stops leaders from doing that already? Or why has this regime, if I can put it like that, built up where leaders don't do that?
I feel like there is definitely still a lot of pressure on leaders. It's always your direct supervisor or manager. They've got pressure on them, and then their leaders got pressure on them from the very top. What I've been learning is what's hopefully going to change is that top-down leadership style, where a lot of the pressure stems from the very top and the culture that's been created within that organization. What people are trying to do now as leaders to be better communicators throughout their team. Teams are very diverse. There's lots more introverts, lots more extroverts, people from all different ethnicities, backgrounds, skill sets. That's what we need in a business organization. You need different minds, and the more different minds you have, the better ideas that are created.
You run a podcast as well called Mindset.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll tell people where they can find that later. And in that, you do a lot of interviews about what's holding people back. What's the biggest thing you found that's holding people back?
Fear. Lots of people have lots of fear. As they say, people in this life are driven predominantly around fear and greed. Neither of them are very good. It's a matter of balancing those tendencies as humans. The thing is, fear can be a good motivator because it pushes you. It is good to, when you're a little bit uncomfortable, just a little bit, you're growing.
That's very true. I have a thing for people that sit there and say, just jump out your comfort zone, because I think that's the most stupid thing anyone can do.
No.
But to work on the edge of it and stretch it
On the edge of
slightly.
it. On the edge of it.
Absolutely. If fear and greed and etc. is the biggest things holding people back, how do you help people to get around that? What life hacks, if I can put it like that, would you?
Everyone's timeline's different, and everyone's at a different stage in that timeline in their life. So what I like to do with guests that I have on is try and extract some tools or tactics that can help, my listeners and then other people, to let them know that, hey, wherever you're starting at right now, things can change. If you're not where you want to be right now, or you don't feel you have the skills or the confidence to get to that next level of where you want to be, that can change. Everything in life is temporary, as my dad always says. And
He's a wise man.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing I would say, is just like, everyone can change or grow or learn at different stages. Even if it happens a little bit later, that's okay. There's no rush.
And I was going to say, is that different for introvert and extrovert? But I can see absolutely no reason why there would be any different whatsoever there.
No difference. It's all about, I like to learn how people like to be, how people like to learn. Like, everyone learns differently. So what it really comes down to is, I always like to ask people, like, okay, like, what are you passionate about? How do you like to learn? And how do you like to think?
How important do you think it is to pause and reflect as part of that learning journey?
Oh, it's very important, because life can get a little bit crazy sometimes. Starts to go a little bit fast when you got a lot going on. My best message that I've seen across a lot of my guests is they have some sort of spiritual practice, whether that be hypnosis, meditation, or they'll just do some reading. That's like their form of calming the mind.
Not spiritual in the spiritual sense, but it's
your own practice, right? Every successful person has their own daily ritual to start their day or to set up the next day.
I like that. Create your ritual where you can pause, you can reflect, and you can learn, I guess, is the important thing in there. Do you think that introverts are more reflective? Do you think that can be done for extroverts as well then? Or they've just got to make more time to do it, perhaps?
I definitely feel extroverts can gain a lot of value from pausing and reflecting, even though they may not reflect as much as introverts. I definitely feel like they still do reflect. It's just they're more like warp speed thinking, and sometimes can get really scatterbrained and stuff. So some sort of daily meditation can be super beneficial to introverts or extroverts. And you can start as little as 5 minutes a day. Whether you would want to listen to something guided or unguided. I currently use the Oak meditation app and then the Headspace meditation app.
Headspace is one that I use myself, and I think it's great.
Oh, it's incredible. And it's taken me 4 years, I would say, to get up into the point where I can meditate, just stay in place and listen to a guided meditation for 10 minutes or more. It's taken time, because again, the speed of your thoughts can be really overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah. I spend a lot of my time underwater, as you know.
Yeah.
And the very fact of being under there, completely different. Every sense, if I could put it like that, is different. And it's extremely meditative.
Yeah.
Which is great. We're kind of coming to the end of time, Alex, I'm afraid. But I always ask my guests for a couple of tips, a tip for an introvert and a tip for a non-introvert. Perhaps you could take us away there.
For sure. A tip for an introvert: try doing a daily meditation, whether that just be putting on a timer on your phone or using the Headspace app or the Oak app. Start with 5 minutes a day. That'll really help you slow down your thoughts and to, just be more in tune with your thoughts. And then a tip for an extrovert, if you're not so much into the meditation, try yoga. Both are, because sometimes extroverts are more physiological rather than psychological. Yoga, still a meditative practice, but you're doing it through your body.
Yeah, sure. And one other quick thought, because you were talking about your early background in sales and finance, which was very extroverted, whereas you were at that time much more introverted, or you still are, I guess, but you've learned tactics. If you could jump back in time and you could train your leaders and your managers how to get more from the introverts in their team and more from you at that time, what would you get them to do differently?
What I would have got them to do differently is, if you have the courage to ask, just say, you know what, your communication style, this is how I need to be communicated to. And that's how it'll help me bring about the best performance for myself. If you communicate to me in this manner.
Brilliant.
Sometimes all you have to do is just have that 5-minute discussion.
But if leaders got into that discussion and learned that little bit more about their team, they would be much better leaders as a result. I like that. Thank you. Alex, I'm sure that some of our listeners will want to get back in touch with you. How's the best way for them to do that?
Well, your listeners can get in touch with me at my blog. So it's Alexander Muir. That's M as a Mike, UIR.com.
Alex, thank you so much for your time. It's been brilliant to talk.
Right on. Really appreciate your time, John. And thanks again for having me on your show.
And now it's time for Introvert Myth of the Week. Those crazy stories that I hear and you hear that some people actually believe. This week's myth: life is better if you're an extrovert. This myth may be down to the fact that Western society has an extrovert bias, with many people believing that extroversion is better, allows better career progression, and creates happier people. Well, if you're an extrovert, you are charged by social interaction. That's not good or bad. It's just a way to understand yourself in relation to others. All people, introvert and extrovert, can have life aims and can work towards them, sometimes faltering, sometimes struggling, sometimes being incredibly successful. That's not an introvert thing. All people can do it. So it follows that introverts can achieve and be happy too. Maybe they'll need a slightly different route. Coming back to that IKEA thing again. Maybe they need more quiet time. Maybe on the way they need to enjoy time with smaller groups of people. Maybe having quiet moments in the working day away from the colleagues that, other than that, they get on with very well. Introverts can develop the skills they need to achieve what they want in the same way as everybody else. I can help you develop some of those tactics if you're introverted or want to understand your introverted employees a bit more. But life is better as an extrovert? No. And no. And no evidence. Unless you want to tell me differently on the Facebook page. I'm John Baker. Thank you for listening. I hope you found it useful. There's a new episode every Thursday at activateyourintrovert.co.uk and your favourite podcast provider. Till then, go be introversial, activating your introverts, building your business.